All right, all right. Welcome. Welcome everyone to the Columbia Project. Amen. This is the destination where you are able to see us here live on YouTube, and it is Tuesday night's spiritual development Bible study class. We are here every Tuesday at 7:30. You can join us as well as on Sundays right here live as well. So at the Columbia Project. And certainly we want you to punch like that subscribe button so that you can share the wonderful presence of Columbia Unity Fellowship Church with others. And if you're able to, by all means, donate. What you're donating is the work that we do in our local community as well as nationwide. Those are the means that you're able to do so. As you see it on the screen, PayPal or through Zelle. And certainly if you happen to be in the Maryland area, we would love to see you and fellowship with you and love on you. You can find us in the Towson area at 120 Allegheny Avenue. And that's where we are. So again, welcome, welcome. We're just going to get right into it. And so, as I said, this is the Spiritual Development Bible Study class on today. My title is Look and Listen. All right. We're going to be getting into the book of Matthew 17, 1 through 9. It was a beautiful message that you can go back to our YouTube channel and find on Sunday sermon that our Reverend Janet gave. It was an awesome message that she gave when we had our virtual service on Sunday. So this text was also referenced there. And then we're also going to look at the book of Exodus, which is at 24, 12 through 18. So get out your pen and pads. You want to take some notes. Certainly, this is a engagement. This is a conversation. That's how we do it here. So feel free to unmute yourself so that you can jump in, have any commentary that you like. And we all just take the opportunity to share any tidbits that we get from the lesson. All right. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into it with just reading it. I normally ask for any participants to read it for me, but it's pretty short. So I figure I can just breeze through it with us and also help out with the timing. So with that, we're just going to start here. So Matthew 17, 1 through 5, the first few verses here, it says 6 days later, right? Jesus took Peter, James, and John up on a high mountain to be alone with them. And before their eyes, Jesus was transfigured, his face becoming as dazzling as the sun and his clothes as radiant as light. And suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared to them conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said, Rabbi, how good that we are here. I was excited too. With your permission, I will erect 3 shelters here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. My man Peter was Johnny on the spot, ready to go. He's going to find some sticks, bricks, I don't know. But up on the mountain, he's ready to erect some shelters, okay? So Peter was still speaking when suddenly this bright cloud overshadowed them, and out of the cloud came a voice which said, this is my own, my beloved, on whom my favor rests. Listen to him, man. Didn't say the man part, but you get it. All right, so now keeping it moving, we're going to go through 6 and 9. And so when they heard this, right, the disciples fell forward on the ground. Oh, man, they fell out and they were overcome with fear. And Jesus came toward them and touched them, saying, get up, don't be afraid. And that's what our beautiful Reverend had teached on, saying, get up, don't be afraid on Sunday. And so when they looked up, coast was clear, did not see anyone but Jesus. And as they were coming down the mountainside, right, Jesus commanded them, don't tell anyone about this until the chosen one has risen from the dead. All right, so that's our text. And so in my, way of doing things, you guys know I like definitions. And that's because some things just really stick out to me. And I'm like, I want to unpack it because it just really brings a little bit more enlightenment for me to the text. So I wanted to do that for you here. So what came out is that word transfigured, right? So we've got transfigured, according to Merriam-Webster, transfiguring. And we start with the verb here, transfigure. So it says, to give a new and typically exalted or spiritual appearance, to transform outwardly and usually, catch that, for the better. I thought that was pretty cool. That part that says usually for the better. So we're good there, right? On the definition as far as transfigure goes. All right, so hold that piece, particularly about the usually for the better. That was pretty unique. So anyways, then we've got this whole part about transfiguration, because in this story, it has been called the transfiguration, right? The transfiguration of Jesus. And so transfiguration by definition is a change in form or appearance, metamorphosis, okay? And it comes from the Latin root trans, which means across, and figura, which means form and shape. I just want y'all to know I'm coming with all the energy tonight, okay? So feel free to come in with me on that, because I just thought this was like a fun text. All right, so then that just means that at the end of the day, this definition, as far as the root where it comes from, is also saying that it means change of form or appearance. Roger that. Okay, so now we've got these other words that stood out, right? Because it was like right off the gate in the text, right? Where, you know, Jesus takes them up on the mountain, and right before their eyes, this is what happens. And we're given this beautiful, you know, concept of imagery that's taking place, right? Where it's talking about, you know, Jesus, you know, is transfigured. So those were the definitions that we gave, and his face becoming dazzling as the sun, and his clothes as radiant as light, right? So I just wanted to pull these out. So dazzling, looking that up, I got the word dazzle. And so we got dazzle, right? So dazzle is colorful or impressive, right? Brilliantly or showily bright, okay? Then we've got sun, all right? And so sun is the largest object in our solar system, okay? It is a star, right? If you didn't know, now you know. And it's a hot ball of glowing gases, right? So something that, you know, these words is, you know, you're thinking of something hot, you know, fire. I don't know, like hot is, I don't know, it just gives you almost like the sensation, the word itself, you feel it like physically, it's like, oh, something hot, you know, there's a sensation of heat, right? But yet it's like also in the context of glow. And I think of something that's beautiful, right? Because of that word star, stars are beautiful to me. So then we get this word radiant, right? So we got radiating rays, okay? Right, so this is something that's happening, right? Radiating rays, okay? Or reflecting beams of light, okay? So here, just in context, right? If we're looking at what's happening in this moment, it's all good. It's all beautiful, right? It's all very powerful as well. So we've got vividly, we've got bright, we've got shining, and we have the word glowing. All right. So now we're just gonna like shift just a little bit, because I wanted to see if we can connect with the Old Testament, right? This is the beautiful part of our lectionary this week, where it gives us this contrast and looking at the Old Testament from the New Testament, and it's in Exodus 24, 12, and 18. I said we're just gonna unpack that real quick. All right, so it says here, then Yahweh says to Moses, this is also where the participation part comes in, just give me the heads up. Come up to me, right? Okay, on the mountain and wait there. And I will give you the law and the commandments, which I have inscribed on stone tablets for you to teach them with. Okay. So Moses and Joshua, his attendant, went up the mountain of God, saying to the elders, wait here for us until we return. And Aaron and Hur will be with you. If there is a dispute among you, turn to them. Okay. Then Moses went up the mountain to where the clouds engulfed it, and the glory of Yahweh, other translations I've seen says glory of the Lord, right? But we've got here the glory of Yahweh then came to dwell on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered the mountain for 6 days. On the 7th day, God called to Moses out of the cloud. To the Israelites, the glory of Yahweh looked like, okay, this is the description, an all-consuming fire at the top of the mountain. So 18, closing this out. So Jesus, I'm sorry, my bad. Moses climbed the mountain until he disappeared into the cloud and stayed there for 40 days and 40 nights. So here we go, real quick. Anything that you picked up between the two, I mean, all the hints are there because I've highlighted it, but let's just, say it out loud. From what you got from the Matthew text and then in the Exodus text, anything sticks out? Yeah, Minister Cole.
Light. Deacon said bright light.
You said bright light?
Yeah.
Okay. Deacon said bright light. Cool.
Voices, you can hear the voices, but you can't see a figure.
I didn't hear what she said.
You can hear the voices.
Hear the voices.
But can't see the figures.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. So hearing the voices, but not seeing the figure, right?
I
But
see
the
that
voice,
they
right?
all
It's also
involve
like
going up a mountain
yeah.
or hill.
Yes. So we've got the mountain, we've got the voice, we've got the light, bright. Anything else? Nah. Hey, Ross, good to see you, brother.
Hey, same to you.
Yes, sir. All right. So yeah, certainly, guys. I mean, that's really what I got too. So in the similarities, if you will, right? So, come up to the mountain is Yahweh saying to Moses. Jesus, took James and Peter and John up the mountain. So we've got up the mountain as well. And then the clouds was similar here. I'm thinking in reference to like that voice and also just the imagery of a mountain and having the clouds being in the mountains or the mountains being in the clouds, kind of vice versa there. We've got that imagery of fire and consuming fire. And that came for me also in like the description of the sun and the radiance, if you will, in terms of light, like Deacon was talking about. Okay, so let's go through. We're just going to back it up. Oh, in the 6 days, that's what it was. That number 6 that stood out to me for that too. So let's go back through it. Was anybody else saying something? I didn't want to catch you off. Nope. Okay. All right, hold tight. All right, so we're going to go back through it, but I also want to give some background and just a little bit of context before where I got here, because I was just wanted to get a quick sense of what was going on that I've seen. And so for me, I went through chapter 16. So just, bear with me, family. So what's happened is at the end of the day, we've got Jesus, okay, he's with the disciples, right? None are named at this point, but in chapter 16, particularly, he's talking to the disciples. First and foremost, we've got the Pharisees and the Sadducees, as they do, they come to Jesus and they're always trying to trip him up, okay? And they're asking him this question about signs from heaven, and trying to test him, and right. And so then Jesus is like, look, you ain't going to get no sign from me, point blank, period. And he keeps it moving. Okay. And so then they go to travel and they cross this far shore of the lake. And the disciples are like, oh, snap, we forgot the bread. Okay. And so Jesus is like, hey, ignores that first comment. And he's like, look, I need you guys to be alert, be on your guard against yeast of Pharisees and Sadducees. Right. And so the disciples, right, like I get it, they'd be like, he's using this word yeast. He's like, they're like, I wonder if he's talking about, the bread, okay, that they forgot, they didn't bring the bread, right? And so Jesus like, oh my gosh, basically, no, I'm not talking about the bread. He's like, because he starts reminding, he's like, the bread is a small thing. Do you remember the 5,000 with the so little bit of loaves of bread that I fed, the 1,000, same with the 4,000, like he's just giving them the examples and reminding them like what you're thinking about, what you're focused on is not of importance, right? And the reason why I wanted to also bring this into conversation is because I think this leads me into my title of looking and listening. And where I took from it that Jesus is steering the disciples to turn their minds into a space of where they can focus on or having spiritual thought, right? Focusing on thinking on the things of God. Okay. And so he's talking about, you have so little faith. This is chapter 16, verse 8, right? Because he's listening to them. They're talking about this bread and they're, thinking that he's talking about, yeast and relating to the bread. And so Jesus is like, no, again, can you comprehend? He's like, how come you can't comprehend, what I'm trying to say to you? And then they're like, oh, now we get it. So then there's a moment, right? There is a moment to where naturally, yes, there are some things that we focus on that you are paying attention to, and it takes some adjustment. It takes something in terms of reminder, right? That if we could, allow ourselves to shift our thoughts and let Jesus remind us, like, it's not what you're thinking, is you needing to change your thoughts, that you get it, right? And you're like, oh, okay, it really is about where Jesus is saying the warning about the teachings of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? Because at the beginning of that story, they were all about the trickery of it all. Okay. So he's like putting them on game, asking them to be alert. And so then they move forward here. And this is the piece that I thought was pretty cool. So let me see if I have it here. I think I shared it. Yes. Okay. So this piece right here is where Jesus, so they come and they travel. I'm into verse 13, and they're in this neighborhood of Caesarea, right? And so then Jesus is asking the disciples this very important question. This is going to lead us back into our text about even when he's talking about himself being the chosen one and not to say anything, okay? But I needed us to go here real quick so you can see it. Sorry. Okay. All right. So here's where I'm at. So they come here. And Jesus asked them this question. He's like, hey, what do people say as far as about the chosen one, right? And so then they give this answer, right? To me, they're answering based off of what the streets are already saying, right? This is like common knowledge, right? So they're like, yeah, some people say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others, say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Okay. And so Jesus is like, okay, and you, he says, who do you say I am? So now it's like Jesus to me is revealing himself as who he's asking about. Does that make sense? Because he's asking him the setup question of who are people talking about, who's the chosen one? And he's identifying himself as who do they say I am, right? So he's saying I am the chosen one, right? So off the break, we've got here, you are the Messiah. Now this answer comes from Simon Peter, right? Our guy Peter, we love him. Comes from Peter. And Peter furthermore says, the firstborn of the living God. So he's like, you're the Messiah, the firstborn of the living God. And Jesus replies like, blessed are you, Simon ben Jonah, right? He says, because no mere mortal has revealed this to you, but Abba, Mother, Father, God in heaven. And he says, I also tell you this, your name now is Rock. Okay. And so Rock, just so you understand this, rock means faith, right? So your name is now faith. And on bedrock, right, like this, I will build my community. All right. So hold this all in frame. Okay. And the jaws of death will not prevail. So let's go back a little bit here to this text. So we understand who he took. So he took Peter, number one. Peter is the guy that Jesus is saying, no mere mortal revealed this to you, right? And Jesus is calling Peter faith, right? He's like, this is your new name. So in other words, what's being taken up on the mountain is having this consciousness, this idea, this understanding of needing faith, right? On this journey where we're going, okay, want to insert us here in this text is we're going up, and what's needed is going to be faith, right? And so we're going up on a high mountain, and Jesus is saying, at this point, to do so is to be alone with them, right? To be alone with them, to spend time with them. And what's happening right before their eyes, this experience is something that's amazing, right? Something that is beautiful, right? Something that is beneficial. And what's beneficial is everything that we described in the definition of dazzle and what the sun is, something that's radiant, something that's bright, right? And the transformation is the new change and the new form. So in putting us in this text, right, we're seeing that in this moment, the requirement for us is to have faith, and what's going to happen for us is a transfiguration. This transformation is going to be something that is bright, that's going to be dazzling, is going to allow us to change form, even change our appearance, right? Now, this piece I like too, because it says suddenly. So suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them conversing with Jesus. And I thought this was interesting because it's almost as if it's like, when you think about it, these guys don't even get scared about seeing Moses or Elijah. They're not shook about this transformation that the writer is saying that's happening, right? That's being described, right? I'm not even sure if I don't know per se, if that's something they're taking all in of what's happening. But at the end of the day, it's happening, right? So the story says, but this is something that they're not even, I guess, moved by, so to speak, because my guy, Peter, he's like, man, let me go ahead and build some tents. Let's get this shelter going. Because he's like, high five, Jesus. This is a great thing that we are even here to witness this, to see all this, right? And so this is where this look and listening is coming into play as well. So they're looking, they're seeing, okay, and I don't know about, any sounds. We don't even get any sounds. We get, if anything, the imagery of what's happening, right? But here's what happens. The next, end scene. Okay, so while Peter's still talking, suddenly, again, it's like important that we need to catch the shift, if you will. Suddenly, this bright cloud, right? And that's what I was asking if you saw the similarity in reference to in Exodus, because it happens also with Moses. So the continuity here is there is a move of God that's happening, right? Suddenly is where this cloud overshadows them. And as we understood in Exodus, then the cloud engulfs or envelops the mountain and the voice comes out, right? And so this is what happens out of this cloud. This voice says, okay, this is my own, my beloved, whom my favor rests, okay? And remember the cloud in Exodus, the cloud rested and dwelled right there on the mountain. So we get to see the same type of activity of what the Spirit of God is doing. Okay. And so my point here is that Jesus is the connection of Yahweh, right? Just as it was in Exodus, right? The move of God is the movement, the transfiguration that's happening here in Matthew, just as it did in the time with Moses. Now, the piece of this is the look and listen. What are we listening to? The instruction, right? The listen here is listen to him. Listen to who? Listen to Jesus, right? So Jesus took them up to be with him. And this is where we need to understand that for us, we need to be able to allow Jesus to take us so that Jesus could be with us, right? The chosen one to be with us. And we need to listen. This is the instruction, right? Because we understand it was the same thing with in Exodus. They needed to go up because it was the glory of Yahweh said, I'm going to give you the law, right? I'm going to give you the commandments. Okay. So it's the same idea that we need to understand, that it is the will of God to give us instruction, to give us guidance. And for us, I believe that it is for us, the action for us on our part, the willingness for us is that we have to be willing to be taken up in a way, right, to a space that we can get up to our higher place and experience this transfiguration. But in that transfiguration, we're paying attention with our natural eyes. We get it. We see, we acknowledge things that are happening. We acknowledge that things show up where we want to pitch tents and, make shelters and things like that. Not saying that is wrong. It's not about right or wrong, right? But it's the ability to acknowledge us as human beings in our state, right? The beauty of this is because there's beautiful things that are happening, we got to catch the listen part, right? We got to catch the commandments. We got to catch the law. We got to catch the instruction. That's where I wanted us to land on that. So follow with me some more is this next piece. Now, this is where, again, the shift and scene, next part. They hear this cloud, they hear this voice, okay, that's coming. Now they're shook, which I thought was interesting. Like, oh, now you're scared. Like after seeing the transfiguration and all that, okay, and seeing the bodies of people that were dead to show up, now you're scared. Like, okay, I got it, fam. So they are overcome with fear. So at the end of the day, family, I don't know how the experience could be for you, but some things could show up, right? Especially where, you are going through something and it throws you off guard and you weren't expecting it. But there's this voice, right, that can really show up, and feel free to speak to if you had an experience like this before. But at the end of the day, you can become overcome with fear, right? And what happens here is just like they did, they respond by falling forward on the ground, right? And that's just showing the posture, okay, of knowing that here's some limitation. This is where their understanding was limited here, right? And that what they recognized was something they would have never expected. They didn't know how to deal with. They didn't have the means of understanding what was going on, okay? And the beauty of this in verse 7 is that just as Jesus took them, oh my God, it's so good. Jesus is right there with us, right? Jesus is right there with them. Jesus ain't go nowhere. Jesus has been there through all that transfiguration and everything. Jesus is right here. And what happens? Jesus comes right forward, right? Jesus comes towards us. Jesus comes towards them and he touches them, right? So I need you to know that as well, okay? So in this space, right, when you're in a space to where you may be overcome with fear, right? And your natural reaction is to fall forward on the ground, right? Know that Jesus is right there and Jesus is going to come towards you, okay? Jesus is going to touch you. Now, this beautiful part too is you have to catch, like Rev said, get up, right? This is, again, the instruction, okay? Jesus says, get up. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Why? Because Jesus is right there, right? Just like if you go back into, like I talked to about 16, don't focus on the bread, okay? Because everything is right there just from what you have, able to multiply thousands, feed thousands, right? Don't focus on what you don't have, what you don't know, what you don't understand, but still get up. Know that you're able to, right? And what's needed here is Peter. What's needed here is faith, right? You need to have faith to get up and not be afraid. And so what happens is they look up. They were probably looking around for, Elijah and Moses. I don't know. Okay. But they're looking up and they recognize that they, see nobody else. Okay. They heard what they heard and they only see Jesus. Okay. And the next, scene is as they're coming down the mountainside, Jesus gives this final commandment. So this is also why I wanted to have us to go back to the chosen one. All right. Because it says, Jesus is telling them now, don't tell anyone about this until the chosen one has risen from the dead. All right, so if we get back to that space, this is where we understand that Jesus has identified himself as the chosen one. And who identified that is Peter, right? Peter identified Jesus as the chosen one. And if you go back to this text, in verse 20 of 16, it says, Jesus strictly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So now you've got them understanding, even from that scene, from that moment, that they understood who Jesus was as the chosen one, as the Messiah. And he gives that instruction. And in that final verse there of, verse 9, right? This part right here, where I wanted to maybe just give you a little bit extra insight, is where Jesus is saying, as you identify me as the chosen one, this insight is given to you by Mother, Father God, the Creator God. And that's the beauty of this here. You and I, we identify Jesus as the Messiah. We identify Jesus as the chosen one. And that insight is given to us by the glory of God, right? Is revealed to us, right? That instruction was given to us by God, okay? And so for us to have that revelation, right, is to have faith, right? Because like Peter, as Jesus said, Jesus called and said, your name is now rock, right? But he says specifically on bedrock like this, right? So on faith like this. So I needed to connect with that. This kind of faith is what's going to build community, family, as we lift up prayers for the movement, for our loved ones, for our families, for anyone that we have a heart for, that we're connected to, not connected to, whatever. That's the kind of faith that we need, that Jesus is saying this type of faith is the very foundation of Jesus building community, of us being able to build community. I wanted us to connect with that. And the next piece of this here is to take away that Jesus even says, and guess what? The very jaws of death won't even prevail against it, okay? And so this is the only aspect, as you know, I always like to give a little hints of my metaphysical background and teaching here is about this part talking about death. So the jaws of death is, and then we'll get to the takeaways, but the jaws of death will not prevail against it. So what is this saying, okay? And why we have to make sure we hold on to this concept of having faith, looking and listening and making sure that we are embodying. This is like a special quality of faith, if you will, okay? This type of faith, as I said, is the very bedrock of building community, okay? And so in the context of death, right? So in here, he's saying, look, you ain't got nothing to worry because the jaws of death itself is not going to prevail against it. Death in this context, in other translations, has been the word hell or Hades, right? So seen in the New Testament, Hades is a Greek word, not to be seen. This is what it means, or not to be looked upon, right? The Hebrew word meaning the same thing is Sheol. So you may have heard of that. Now, the English version of the Bible, which commonly used would have been the King James Version, right? Again, in the New Testament, generally would have translated into this word being used as just hell. So if we said, and the gates of hell is, translated, you may have heard that from the King James Version, you may have heard, and Jesus saying, and the very gates of hell will not prevail, that type of thing, right? So just bring it into context because we have this in inclusive version here. All right, and so its use was meant to refer to the unseen world or the abode of the dead, okay? And so you have words like grave, you have words like pit, right, used as a reference, where Sheol, right, as you also may have seen in the Old Testament, is also that, right? So you've heard or seen the words in the Old Testament as grave, pit, and the word Sheol. Okay, now here's the metaphysical piece. So metaphysically speaking, right, Hades refers to a realm of darkness, okay? It's talking about the consciousness of an individual where they are likened to the darkened conditioning of thought, which is known as error consciousness, okay? Get that, you can write that down. So in contrast of what this is showing us from Matthew, right, where we're understanding this transfiguration, we're understanding this illumination that's taking place, right? This light, this change in form and appearance, right? This change in consciousness, this illumination of inner light, right, and positivity. Here we have this realm of individual darkness, right? And it's said that it's manifested in environment, in thought, in behavior, so on and so forth. And so Jesus is saying that this very state of conditioning, okay, catch that, this very state of conditioning, okay, will not prevail against the bedrock of faith that he will build his community, his church. So in other words, point blank period, light will overcome darkness, right? Faith will overcome darkness. We still get to meet circumstances in our lives that show up as Hades, as hell, as situations that aren't positive, right? And understanding that we need a special type of faith, right? Because even going back in 16, I keep referring to that because we got to kind of like go back a little bit to see how Jesus is trying to train his disciples to listen, to look and listen to instruction and to understand, because he's preparing them for what's to come, right? That he's going to be, basically killed is what he says, right? But he's saying to them, he's like, look, he's like, you got so little faith. He's like, it's a different type of faith that you need to have in this space, right? And it's faith that if you continue to read on, he says, even if you had the faith of a mustard seed, how many times do we talk about that? That I promise you, this type of faith can even move mountains. And so Jesus is really helping us put it all together, that this is the kind of faith, family, that we need to build our communities, to get the justice, to make sure that folks are taken care of, to make sure that there's transfiguration, there's transformation that is going to happen in our lives. And I promise you, not even the gates of hell is going to prevail against this type of faith, okay? that's all I had to say. That's why I'm getting this so excited, because I was like, oh, this is, to me, pretty cool. So let's keep it moving. And let me breathe here so I could give people just any opportunity to comment. I know it was kind of like a lot, but it was a short text, and I just wanted to kind of get right into it. So if anybody have anything, I'm going to go through my takeaways, as you can see, but if anybody has anything that thus far that you want to mention, that'll be fine.
Was the rock term because of bedrock? Is that why you said it rock meant faith?
So Peter, in terms of Jesus giving him his name as rock, the definition of rock in this context means faith. When he names him, and that word Peter, or his name being Peter, being changed to rock, means faith. It is his faith that has been revealed to him from Mother, Father, God, that Jesus is the Messiah.
Yeah, I understand that part. I just didn't know why he didn't call him faith instead of rock.
Well, you could say he just called him faith. I just gave you the interpretation of what rock means, is what I'm saying.
I didn't know if there's something more to that change of the word.
No, nothing extra, just on a metaphysical definition of the word rock. That name, as far as Peter being changed to rock, means faith.
Okay.
And then bedrock, in terms of that, just means like the foundation, right?
Foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I think the Greek Peter is what means rock. I like the way you turned that to be faith, though.
Well, it is a definition in the metaphysical sense that is faith, and his name Peter is. I like that.
Yeah, it's Petra.
Petra, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So, Minister Cole, first of all, I love your applicability of bringing all of these scriptures together. It is just impressive.
Amen.
Impressive. So my takeaway, I'm gonna do this real quick. Many are called, but few are chosen. Christ called 12, but he only chose 3 to go up on that mountain, right? Mm-hmm. And so only the chosen ones are going to be called to this higher level of faith in Christ. Only the chosen ones are going to be called to this higher level of faith that is going to alter their appearance from who they were previously to who God is calling them to be now. And so when you come down from that mountain, from that miraculous encounter with God, you should be a changed person. And it shouldn't be something that you should have to tell everyone, I'm a Christian, I'm following Christ. Your changed behavior and personality should be seen, and they should know that something is different about you. Mm-hmm. So your metaphysical example of using Peter's name to change him from rock to faith, or from he's a faith rock, however you want to look at it. We have to recognize that, without faith, it is impossible to please God. And only the chosen ones that have that higher level of faith is going to have that mountaintop experience. That's what I got.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So even with that too, if it's okay for us to continue dialogue here, while you were talking, because I was thinking about in the context of when he asked the question, right? He says, who he's basically asking, who are the people saying, right, that the chosen one is, right? So you get all these different answers, and then it is the separation of those collective disciples that he's asking this question to, that this gets revealed. So I think it's to your point, right? In terms of the chosen, that there's a distinction of a revelation that happens to those that are able to be, that it is revealed. I guess I don't know how else to say that.
Exercise a higher level of faith. Peter was always behind Christ. Peter always wanted to recognize and see Christ for who he was. And it was because of his faith in who Christ was that it allowed him to be able to be chosen out of all of the other 12, along with James and John, to really see for himself what a transfiguration can look like when people actually get to see who you are because they have always believed in who you were.
Yeah. So then I also want you to see yourself as Peter, right?
Everybody can be a Peter.
Huh?
That's the thing. Everybody can be a Peter. Many are called, but only the chosen ones will really exercise that faith to get to that mountaintop experience.
And yeah, and so I mean, it's like it's not our position to judge it, right? You know what I mean? It's like there's no need for any distinction to figure out who's who and what's what. But like you said, the proof will be in the pudding, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Proof being changed behavior.
Yeah. So behavior, thoughts, right? All of
Right.
it is connected.
Transformed
Mm-hmm.
person is the proof. Right?
Yes, Trusty Marley, absolutely. Yeah, they will know your spirit by your fruits, man, by your love.
Like Tremaine Hawkins said, I know I've been changed.
Sing it.
Amen. Amen.
All right. So anybody else want to chime in? Please. I love it.
Minister Cole,
Yes,
Deacon
Deacon.
Paulette, what
deep.
very, very deep lesson tonight, sir. What spoke to me and what showed the omnipotence of Mother, Father, God is that when the Father God spoke, they couldn't do anything but yield. We don't know what power were in the words when the creator of everything, Mother, Father, God spoke. It wasn't Isaiah, it wasn't Moses. They were there for a period and the guys were okay with it.
Right.
But when Mother, Father, God spoke, they could not stand.
Yeah.
They had to go prostrate. There was nothing else they could do.
Yeah.
This was the God of creation. And I'm speaking to you. I'm letting you hear me.
I hear you.
I got us clouded over, but I'm going to speak to you because y'all are talking a little bit too much. This is my son. I love him and I need you to hear him.
Yeah.
And they could do nothing but yield.
Listen.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. That was the instruction. I love it. Good times. Let me see here. I just saw in the chat, Brother Jordan talked about that all-consuming fire. That was probably from way back, but yes, indeed, God's presence showed up, all-consuming fire. That's a beautiful imagery to have. So here are my takeaways. And from here, excuse me, guys, then we'll go ahead and close this out. So as I said, my title was to look and listen. Already I can hear us that we're listening and we're looking and understanding. So to me, these are just some things that pulled out, right? We're sharing with one another, but on my side, I was pulling out that this was, again, I kept using this this phrase, if you will, instruction, that this was about paying attention. This was about looking, not just from a natural sense, but with spiritual eyes. I don't know. I strongly believe, like, in terms of instructions from Jesus, that it's for us to just go up higher and look at the things of God, to have our mind focus on the things of God. And that's why I brought up even with chapter 16, because he's like, dude, I'm not talking about yeast, they're talking about bread. And I get it, he used this word, but he's like, pay attention. He's like, guard your heart and mind against people who are going to try to trip you up and trick you. And, he's talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, like that was their mission. That was their intent. So it's like, for us to be equipped with that we need to have the knowledge and the understanding to pay attention, to look and listen, but with our spiritual eyes and our spiritual ears on that, what it is that God is instructing us. God is asking us to come up, to be taken away, to sit with the ideas, right, and the understanding of what's to be revealed for us so that we can be transfigured, right? So we can be changed, right? Like DC Renee says, at the end of the day, there should be some fruits that come out of that, right? We should see the evidence of this experience, okay? And so then, then it's about obedience, okay? Because we understand that, like Deacon Paulette says, no one can deny the voice of God, right? But with that too, you need to take the action, right? And hearing the voice of God, where Jesus comes and reveals himself even further and comes towards them and takes them and says, look, don't be afraid. In fact, get up. Okay, get up from where you are, right? There's no need for you to cower, to be in fear, in a state of fear, right? So it's about obedience, and I get it. If we want to say in a human aspect, it could be easier said than done. But again, it's all about how we can train ourselves to be intentional about looking inward, and that's really the gift of meditation as well, to have that spiritual ear and eye so that we can be obedient to the voice of God, right? That we're not afraid, that we're able to get up, okay? And so acknowledging that humanity piece in terms of the response of things that may be of unknown territory, we get that, right? But Rev said on Sunday, right, is calling us still to go up higher, to look up. Sometimes you got to write out the vision and make it plain. Sometimes you got to go back and say, well, what is it that you have for me, God? What is the vision that you have for me? How can I express this vision? How can I share this vision? What does it look like, right? So we get to acknowledge, if we don't know, that we still get to go forward, okay? And so then this is about recognizing the faith that is needed, right? The faith that's needed for us to be the bedrock, to be the foundation of community. We talk a lot about being change agents, right? Having love and action, right? But like Rev said last week, she from the show me state. Okay, you got to show me, right? Show me. So let us show ourselves, right? Through our faith, through our actions, right? Because guess what? Faith will overcome darkness. Faith will overcome those things that have given us those tapes that played over the negativity and ways that we've been conditioned somehow, or others around us could be conditioned. But again, it's not our rule or our job to be so worried about on the outside, but to be focused inward, okay? And then this is indeed about allowing Jesus, the chosen one, to take us, like I said, to be with him, to allow Jesus to come forward towards us and to touch us, family. I promise you, it's a beautiful space to allow that, to be able to surrender and to submit to that and allow that. So I already said it, get up, don't be afraid, and allow Yahweh, the all-consuming fire, like Brother Jordan put in the chat, right? We are all on the same mission. We are all connected through this spiritual knowing. So I love how, just tying it all in here, I already wrote it, like a burning fire, right? A consuming fire, okay? And moving like a cloud in our lives, allowing Yahweh to move like a cloud in our lives. So those are my takeaways. I am going to turn it over to our beautiful pastor, and I know she's going to ask you for yours, so be prepared in that. But before I end it and turn it over to Pastor, I just want to thank every single person that's tuned in with us tonight. Feel free, like I said, to punch the like and subscribe button, share it with friends and family, continue to join us every single week here at the Columbia Project, and certainly tune in later in the week on Sunday. We love to see you. We love fellowshipping with you, and God bless you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Minister Cole. Thank you, everyone in the class, for this rich discussion and wonderful lesson. I have a question for you, and then that question will be bounced to the rest of the class. Today is the day that we call Fat Tuesday or Show Tuesday, or it's a day that is the last day of Mardi Gras, because Mardi Gras in many places start long before today. And then tomorrow is Lent, and it begins the Lenten season. We call tomorrow Ash Wednesday. So how do you apply this lesson to Lent? What does this lesson mean for you individually? And maybe us collectively, but start with you individually as we enter into the Lenten season. Did we lose Minister Cole? No, there you
No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought it was to the.
go. It is.
My bad.
It is. It is. You and you, the
I'm right
teacher,
here. I'm
and the
certainly here.
class. Yes.
Okay, I
How does this
apologize.
apply? How will this apply to you? How will this lesson apply to you during this Lenten season?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, immediately what comes up is the laying down of things that will weigh me down, turning over intentionally my mindset, allowing, like I said, the chosen one, the glory of God to transform me, to change me. And, that's my individual, kind of lane or rule for myself. And then collectively is really kind of leaning on to what DC Renee was saying in terms of like how that shows up outwardly, right? And how that should be something that others could be able to see that I am doing the work, right? That I am allowing this to be a transfiguring moment during this Lent season. So
Thank
that's
you.
for me.
Who else?
It's about the faith. It's about being a rock
Mhm.
in that rock,
Mhm.
deepening faith,
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you.
demonstrating in our behavior.
Thank you. Who else?
Fully letting go of all my fears.
Good. Letting go of
But
fear.
for me, it's going to be about exercising more faith. So tomorrow is Lent season, and it is actually the day that I take my mother. We drive up to New York for the funeral for her last living brother. And it's just a mess on that side. It's a complete mess. And I just have to trust God that God is going to, make it all better. That's for me individually, not to take it in, but to have faith that God's got it. But in terms of, collectively, I guess it's kind of just moving into that higher level of faith and allowing God to, use me where God has planted me.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Who's next?
Pastor,
Yes.
the speak to me personally is to grow into being still enough to hear God's voice.
Yeah.
When God had to shut Peter up, he had to shut him up. He was doing Peter. He was doing Peter. Like we
You're
do
doing too
us.
much, huh?
Like we do us. We do
Uh-huh.
us.
Yes.
I want to lean into being still enough to hear more of what the Lord would have me to hear. That's a goal of mine personally. Thank you.
Mhm. Who else?
And Pastor, for me, it would be to elevate the faith, my faith, and to listen to God, but really to elevate. Thank you.
Who else? Brother Ross, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What do you think? How's this lesson gonna guide you during the Lenten season?
I really don't know too much about Lent.
Okay. Mhm.
The Pentecostal church I came from, we never celebrate Lent.
Right.
So, I see people, with the black ash on top of their head, and their forehead. But as far as me, I really don't know much about it.
Sure. Thank you for saying that, right? Because we weren't all raised in the tradition of Lent. I have learned the tradition of Lent as an adult, I have to say. For my family, we had Holy Week, right?
Right.
That was the week of consecration. And Lent, really, if you think of it that way, it extends that time. So this is usually a time that is set aside, in the church to consecrate ourselves. Many people will give up something during Lent. I encourage us to take on a spiritual practice or take on something, even a social justice initiative, take on something during Lent. And I also usually honor each person's beliefs. These passages come in at a time to help us also think about how God begins to place us in opportunities so that we can focus on God and God's place in our lives, so that we can see God transfiguring our lives. As God transfigured Jesus, God transfigures us. That transfigure, as Minister Cole said, and as Reverend Janice said, is a change, is a transformation. And we heard, as we read the scriptures, Jesus being affirmed multiple times by God, right? This is my chosen one. Listen to him. This is my son. And in other passages, this is my son, hear ye him. And God affirms us as well, right? God affirms us as well. And this is a time that we can set aside to hear the voice of God as it affirms us, as it speaks to us, as God's voice reminds us that God is there and increases our faith. Both the Old and the New Testaments also demonstrate God sort of preparing us to see, to witness the presence of God in our lives. And I invite you during this season to pay attention, to be still and hear and witness the presence of God in your lives, in the way in which God and only God will show up. So I definitely understand about the Lenten season not being a season that every church celebrates or acknowledges. And like I said, I learned of it as an adult. I find it to be a sacred season. And I also find it to be sacred because people all over the world, right, are taking this time to set aside time to hear God as well. So I invite you during this season just to, if nothing else, just allow God to show you God's presence a little more tangibly in your life. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else, Sister Sharon? Reverend Janet? Deacon Lynn?
Well, I think Deacon Lynn already said something.
Okay. Yes, she did. That's right. Yes.
Yes, Deacon Lynn already said something. For me, it's all about action. We give up things, but even in giving those things up, what are we picking up?
That's right.
And it's the positive things that we're picking up that will prevail, the things that will carry us through, with our faith and everything. And so it's all about the action.
Yes.
Don't just be about it. You got to do. You got to do, because it's that allows your light to shine for other people to see.
Yes.
Because if you're just giving up, you're burning the old, which is basically what the ashes are. They're old palms from last year.
That's right. Yes.
They're burning them, getting rid of the old, making room for the new, what is to come. And so if you think of it that way, this is how you turn over a new leaf, so to speak.
That's good. Although you just burn those leaves. No. That's good. That's good. Yes. I encourage us all as we prepare to close out this class and prepare ourselves to enter into this Lenten season, that we take all of those in mind, right? All the conversations that we've had, about this amazing lesson that Minister Cole brought to us and Reverend Janet preached to us on Sunday and tonight. I did watch the service, by the way. It was a very good service. Thank you, family, for the opportunity to worship with you by way of YouTube as well. And I found both very powerful and heart piercing for us all, to give us an opportunity to just sort of use this time to reflect on God's calling in our lives and how God is leading us to move in this world. And whether you give something up or whether you pick up something, or maybe you do a little of both, because I always believe that when you give something up, then you're opening yourself up to have room to take on something, right? So whether you give something up or you pick up something, let this be a season where you are able to position yourself to hear God's voice and to hear God move in your life. And as Reverend Janet said, even when we receive messages from God, it's for us to also take action. For us to, as Jesus would have said, shout it from the mountaintops, right? That what we hear and what we receive from God is not just for us, but it's for those who God has put in our lives so they can receive a blessing or encouragement or affirmation from the lives that we live. So I pray with you as we close this evening out. And I pray with and for you during this Lenten season, that this is a season of affirmation, that this is a season of confirmation, that this is a season of faith and foundation and strength. This is a season of growth, growing in grace. That this is a season where you are completely affirmed that you are the child of God, that you know that you are, and that you are able to walk boldly in understanding that you too have heard God's voice. This is my beloved child. Listen to him, listen to her, listen to them. Because you too are transformed by the voice of God. Thank you, Minister.